If you've grown familiar, you may know that if you're listening to me before you're listening to the intro of the podcast, that there was a little production oopsie, and this one I can't really blame on technology or anything. This was my fault, Christianta's fault. Um, but albeit it's a minor thing, you'll be able to hear the episode very clearly. It's just me and especially Daniel in this episode is a little bit echoey because I forgot to do the last step of production, which is have the um, have the settings of our recording software um, be on the setting where where the computer and the system with the microphones that we're recording on are connected. So instead of hearing us on the microphones, you're hearing us on the computer microphones, which is a lower quality. And Daniel was a little further away from the computer than I, because we weren't planning to record it on the computer. So he's a little more echoey. I did the best I could with editing, but there might be times where his voice is a little quieter, which I know is disappointing. He's the smart man on the show, so hate to see that. But my fault. But anyway, all right. Well, now that you know that, I wanted to address it just to make sure that people didn't think we were putting out a super well produced episode. But yeah, without further ado, maybe you wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't mentioned it, but I felt like mentioning it. Without further ado, here is the 232nd edition of Above Replacement Radio.
Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Kern.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball, kind of whatever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there to my actual left, as you cannot see on YouTube, unfortunately, is Daniel Kern. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I am doing well today. We are back on campus for the last dance, if you will. I mean, we are graduating in 2 months.
Yeah.
This is the last homestand, if you will.
True. Yeah. Good baseball pun.
Yeah, but that's where we're at right now. We're in the 9th inning.
Yeah. That's very true.
We're old.
We're old. Yeah.
We used to not be old on this show.
You could show video of us in freshman year when we started doing video
On Periscope?
and yeah, well actually Periscope
It doesn't exist anymore.
it doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore, and also Twitter took down the Periscope videos, so there's
that footage is gone.
there's no files. I would have had to download like a ton of stuff onto my phone, which I wasn't willing to do.
No,
But
absolutely not.
so you will not be getting takes on why I thought Zach Wheeler was overpaid.
Yeah, and why I thought he was perfectly paid.
But you'll not be getting any of those takes. But you could take videos from our freshman year and be like, remember them? This is them now. And it's a picture.
Yeah.
It's a video of us in 2023. It's like, feel old yet? Yeah, that's what's going on.
Yeah, we don't have any 2019 video. We're just gonna have to take 2020, like
We have a
around
couple.
the start of the pandemic.
We have a couple pictures that I think Daniel's mom took.
We do. That is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
We have one. Exactly one.
we have one.
Yeah.
I think my mom took also one photo, so
Okay.
we'll make that two.
Yeah.
So
That's big.
yeah, shout out to the freshman year podcast, the prep sheets. I know when we did our players to watch, we do dot points. My
Yeah.
notes were about 2 lines long.
Yep.
It was like, oh, this guy had a good OPS last year.
Yeah. This guy could be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Baseball Savant and the search tool has made things a lot
Yes.
more fun.
And like further knowledge of Fangraphs and StatHead.
Yep, absolutely.
We've evolved.
We have evolved. But yeah, before we get into our final division preview, well, I don't know if it's weird to call it a division preview because we kind of do predictions. That we'll be doing predictions next week, and we don't really necessarily outlook what the team will look like, but we address their additions and subtractions and ask a question about them and look for one player to watch. But for our final round of players to watch, before we get to that, there was a good amount of baseball news. First of all, the WBC is continuing. It's finishing up this week.
Good amount of baseball news, but not any amount of good baseball news.
No, not really. The first bit of news kind of took a lot of headlines for obvious reasons. Edwin Diaz tore his patellar tendon in his knee and is expected to miss 8 months, which is the entire 2022 or 2023 baseball season. It was during a celebration with Team Puerto Rico after they defeated the Dominican Republic, right?
Yes.
And yeah, first of all, I just addressing the news, terrible for the Mets, but also, I think they'll be able to strive through it. What were your thoughts on the injury?
Yeah, I mean, this just sucks. There's really no other way to put it. A lot of people had very reactionary takes about the WBC as a whole and things of that nature in light of this injury. And I think the WBC is still the same way it was. I still view it the same way before. I think it's great. But obviously a lot of people had, some reactionary takes to this injury. And it just sucks. You don't want to watch a guy you don't want to have to see Edwin Diaz on the sidelines for a whole season, especially when you know the money that Steve Cohen has put into this team and how much he's invested into this team winning. And the guy that ensures those wins is not going to be there. So that sucks. It really is unfortunate. But ultimately, I think the Mets will be all right. Like you said, they do have some bullpen depth. And yeah, we're just going to have to see how it goes.
Yeah, it really sucks for the team and especially for Edwin Diaz, this is the last thing he wanted.
Yeah.
He didn't participate in the WBC to get injured, obviously. No. He went to represent Puerto Rico. However, yeah, it does suck. I mean, he had one of the best reliever seasons of all time last year, .90 FIP. 17.1 strikeouts per 9, which is a record for any season with more than 60 innings pitched.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously a tremendous talent, one of the best relievers in baseball and arguably the best. I think it affects the Mets more than a normal sort of, World Series contender, because one thing I mentioned about why this was a good signing was because, the Mets didn't really have a crazy closer behind them. Not saying that their bullpen is bad, but they didn't really have another stopper. An example I pointed to was the Brewers, when they traded Josh Hader, they had Devin Williams. Mm-hmm. Not that Craig Kimbrell was great with the Dodgers, but with the Dodgers losing Craig Kimbrell, they have Evan Phillips.
Yeah.
The Mets, they're going to have to find their guy.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have their immediate... Not that there's ever replacing a guy like that when you had that kind of season, but yeah. I mean, there is certainly question marks as to what the back end of this bullpen looks like come not just the end of the season, but come May, come the All-Star break, come September.
Yeah, absolutely.
As of right now, they have David Robertson, who is about to be 38, as their closer, according to Fangraphs depth charts.
Right, yeah, and he's more of a guy that has, just ninth inning experience as opposed to, mm-hmm. He's not someone that's probably going to have, a 2-ish FIP or a 2-ish ERA. He'll be good, he'll be serviceable, but you're going to him more in the ninth inning because he already has experience there, not necessarily because he's a crazy dominant force. And they didn't sign him to be that way. But I think, sometimes the ninth inning role probably gets a little propped up. However, sometimes you just see good eighth inning guys just completely lose it in the mm-hmm. ninth. The transition doesn't go well, but, we'll see what happens there. But ultimately, yeah, the Mets are still obviously a division contender and a World Series contender, despite the loss. And they'll be able to get through it. Although, do we know the status of that Nimmo injury? I never followed up on it.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing.
It's really not. He'll be on the opening day roster.
Yeah, that's good. But anyway, outside of the spectacle of the Mets, there was some backlash, albeit there were only really two significant voices, and by significant I mean guys with a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Who had the take of you need to cancel the WBC. It's not useful. No one cares about it, and he got injured doing something that no one cares about. What were your reactions to that?
It was stupid. I mean, I think I'm in the majority. I mean, if you saw the ratios, as they say on Twitter, on those tweets, it was pretty clear what the popular opinion is, and that's what I share. The WBC is awesome. I think it should be every 2 years, or at least just better than every 4 years, more often than that, because it obviously means a lot to people in general. I think just in general, Americans are probably less inclined to care because in America we have consistent access to the best baseball players from around the world. We have obviously Team USA is in the final, and we have all those players that play here. We have the best guys on Team Puerto Rico. We have the best guys on the Dominican Republic team. We have the best player on Team Japan, which is probably the best player in the entire universe.
Yeah.
In the U.S., we have consistent access to all of these guys that are all fighting for, the one common goal of the World Series, which has been the big thing in the U.S. for 100 plus years. When you're not in the U.S. and you are sending your best guys to play somewhere else, when they all come back to play together, that means something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the best example to look at it from an American perspective would be the World Cup, right? I mean, how many people in America watch soccer or watch the World Cup when they don't watch soccer to begin with? A lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Because you know what? Messi doesn't play in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Cristiano Ronaldo does not play in Colorado.
Right.
Right. We don't get to see those guys that often. So when you have, the people from, and not that America competed against those particular individuals, but when you're sending out your best guys to go somewhere else to compete against the other best teams when they have something to prove, it means something because the U.S. probably has the least to prove in this World Baseball Classic among all the other teams.
Yeah, very true.
I mean, I don't know if you disagree with that take or not, but I find it hard to believe there's another team that has less to prove than the U.S. does.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, maybe they have the most pressure, but it's all that's not what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fitting that it was two Americans that had that take because
obviously
it's I think America has less to prove because also we've called it the national pastime.
Yeah,
even though it
is kind of our sport. It was invented on this soil.
Yeah,
it's been played on this soil for 150 years.
Yeah, it was invented in upstate New York.
Yes.
In America, and we have the biggest league that has 29 of 30 major league teams in it, in the country. So it is a very American take to say that, and I'll say I definitely care more about the MLB playoffs than I do the World Baseball Classic. I'm much less likely to miss a playoff game than a WBC game. However, I'm not everybody, and I'm also American, and if I were to talk to someone from Puerto Rico, they would much rather miss Game 7 of the World Series than a World Baseball Classic final with Puerto Rico in it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it so many times in this tournament. There was a video where someone asked a bunch of the people on the Dominican Republic team, would you rather win a World Series or a World Baseball Classic? And a lot of them said a World Baseball Classic. Yeah. Including Robinson Cano, who's won a World Series.
Right.
Which maybe it's just easier to say it that way. It's I've already done this, I haven't done that, I want to do the one I haven't done. But still, I mean, we've seen it with, Trey Turner saying that, the home run that he hit was, the biggest moment of his career. It's a guy who's won a World Series.
Yeah, right.
We had Randy Arozarena, who hit, 1,000 home runs in the playoffs, saying that catch against Puerto Rico was the best moment of his career.
Yeah.
This means something to not even just the people from, the Latin American countries and from overseas, but it means a lot to everybody.
Right.
to
Yeah.
play in this tournament.
Yeah, and it's not even like America doesn't care necessarily.
Yeah,
It's just
they're less inclined to care.
they're less inclined to care, and like even like when you were at at Lone Depot Park when Trey Turner hit that grand slam, like compare that crowd noise to I don't know, Nationals Park during like the 2019 World
Yeah,
Series.
and not only that, but like it's a pretty neutral crowd too.
Yeah,
Like it's not
right.
like it's a home game for one team where one team has all the fans. It was still that loud, and there was a lot of people that probably weren't happy about that home run in that ballpark.
Yeah, and there wasn't there despite all the tweets and ratios, there was no better retaliation to that point when like the next day and the day after
Yep.
all the videos of like the the home runs with playoff atmosphere crowds and like players chest pumping out of the box.
Yeah, like players behaving on the field in a way that they never would in the regular season or even the postseason. Like there's
Yeah.
a home run hit, the entire team is at home plate.
Yeah.
Like you only see that when like a guy hits his like a milestone home run
Yep. Yep.
or like a milestone hit,
Yeah, and I think
and even then it doesn't have the same energy.
Exactly. And I think it's easy to think of this as less important because, I think the MLB season it's more of a storyline and it's easier to see that team development because it takes place over the course of 7 months, and if you go back to spring training over the course of about 8.5. However, like so when it's a 2 to 3 week tournament, it's not gonna that impact isn't going to be seen as effectively, but like that these moments are cherished forever for many of these players, including Team USA players.
Yeah. I mean, it also includes the fact that like the World Baseball Classic is still relatively new. I think this is the 5th one that's ever been held.
True.
There isn't a lot of history behind it, and not only that, but like the World Baseball Classic was kind of lame up until a couple tournaments ago. Like in 2017, at the beginning of the season, it was an afterthought. It was just like, oh yeah, that thing that with the tournament, that's happening. And in 2017, everyone was buying into it. I remember being a sophomore in high school, being like, I can't miss these games.
Yes.
Like I got to be watching USA versus Colombia on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Like it used to not be like that. That it was only became a much more recent thing.
And even in saying that, I think it's also like, and I totally agree with you, but it's also an American sort of take because America wasn't doing well until 2017.
Yeah, exactly.
I like shout out to Baseball Doesn't Exist on YouTube. He doesn't need any more clout. He gets enough views, but he kind of went over the history of the WBC and showed like what the Tokyo Dome looked like in like 2009. Like they cared. It's just the USA wasn't good yet, so it didn't have the American attention. Once America won the WBC in 2017, it attracted a lot more attention, and obviously I think that Adam Jones robbed home run was like
the highlight
huge,
of the classic,
huge for like USA baseball and garnering interest because that was just a huge moment in that game and in general.
It was an elimination game against the defending champions, the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
That home run ended up being the difference because I'm pretty sure it was a 6-5 final.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I remember watching that game.
Yeah.
And also like it was cool that Manny Machado hit it when he was still in the Orioles and Adam Jones caught it.
Right. Like that was a big moment.
It is very funny seeing the interactions between teammates as opponents. Like I remember during the USA versus Venezuela game, Kyle Tucker hit a double, and there was a bang play at second, and Jose Altuve tagged him. He was called safe, and Altuve was like, "No, you got to look at that. He's out." It's like, dude, that's your teammate. You're calling him out.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like it's just very funny it's a funny visual, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, very much so. But like I don't need to go over viewership statistics, but there's plenty of that out there that proves that this is very important to a lot of different people. So yeah, like that whole narrative, it's a very much in the minority, and it's for a good reason.
Yeah. Mike Trout's having fun. That's cool.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
He's playing very well.
Yes. It turns out turns out the Angels haven't been to the playoffs in 9 years.
Yeah, which nobody talks about that.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody talks about the narrative of like, oh, you got to get Mike Trout on a playoff team.
Yeah. Look, Mike Trout's playing important games, yo. Like, that's so cool. Like, why can't the Angels
he's kind of made the playoffs once, but like he didn't really make the playoffs because like he only had one hit. It was a home run, but he had one hit, and they lost after 3 games. They got swept actually.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so like Mike Trout hasn't really been to the playoffs, but like he actually has. But we're just gonna say that he's never been to the playoffs.
Yeah.
That one didn't count.
No, it didn't. They won 99 games. It was such a fake
98.
team. Oh, 98 games.
Yeah.
What a fake team.
Yeah.
They're like the 2016 Rangers.
They really are.
Yeah.
An AOS thing.
Just a fake team. But yeah, that was not the only injury to happen to a major player. Perhaps a more major player was injured. However, he will be back this season. He'll be back in a couple months, or 3 months maybe.
Yeah.
It was a broken thumb, 8 to 10 weeks. Jose Altuve had a broken thumb. He got hit by a pitch, unfortunately. What do you think about the implications with this one?
I mean, I wasn't watching the game, but I watched it back, and Daniel Bard had no business still being in the game when it happened. Daniel Bard really was struggling. He couldn't find the plate. He ended up allowing 4 runs without recording an out.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't speak there for a second. And after like 20 pitches that were nowhere near the zone, DeRosa kept him in, and he drilled Altuve, which ended up leaving him out. Which, like, I don't know. I wish he was out of the game earlier so that didn't happen. But ultimately, that's what it was.
Yeah. It's tough, but obviously that also could have happened in a spring training game. And yeah, not to go back to the Diaz thing, but the Diaz thing was weird because it was during a celebration, and like that just goes down as a non-baseball injury for me personally.
It's
like
a fluke.
It's a fluky thing. Like I remember like Jabba Chamberlain, I think had to stay out for like a few months because he injured his knee like jumping on the trampoline with his kid. I think
it's like every like couple of years you see an injury where like a guy punched a wall.
Yeah.
And like broke their wrist and was out for some time, or like fell downstairs or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I mean, it sucks obviously, but like it's not like it never happens, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't the World Baseball Classic.
Right. Like I looked it up. MLB.com actually has a list of strangest injuries, but David Robertson strained his calf jumping when teammate Bryce Harper hit a home run in the NL Wildcard Series.
Yep, that did happen.
James
Caprillion.
James Carpillion was scratched from a start hours before game time on September 9 with a right middle finger laceration. The right-hander sustained a cut the night before when he hit a wall while extending his right arm to put on a shirt. There
was the Chris Sale riding a bike injury last year.
And then there were the idiots that were like, he should not be riding a bike.
There was the Devin Williams injury in 2021, like when they were celebrating the division.
Yep.
When he like punched a wall or something like that.
So this goes down as one of them, like the Edwin Diaz one just goes down as one of them because if I were to jump up and down, I would not be thinking my patellar tendon was just going to go out.
Yeah.
I don't know if the video wasn't clear. I don't know if he like landed on someone and
he was kind of in the middle of everyone.
Yeah.
So it was tough, but yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. I just know Kendrys Morales tore his ACL after a walk-off home run once.
Jumping on home plate.
Yeah.
2010.
So like, I don't know. You can't predict it. It's not like he got hit with a comebacker or tore his Achilles like trying to cover first or something, or like got into a collision, for instance. It was just a random event. So I like have that as a non-baseball injury almost. And the Mets are reimbursed. Not that it's a problem for Steve Cohen, but Edwin Diaz won't get paid this year. Yeah, but anyway,
I think Steve Cohen would rather pay that money and have him.
Yes, exactly.
Which I can't say the majority of owners feel that way.
Yeah,
but
very true. But
I can picture Bob Nutting being like, "This guy that's at ARB1 just got hurt. Let's go."
With Jose Altuve, he'll be out for the Astros for a couple months. However, the Astros usually find a way. Look out for David Hensley.
Yeah, true.
David Hensley. He's
That is a great point.
he had over 1,000 OPS. Granted, it was like 16 games in with the Astros last year, but he's my Astros player to watch. So maybe he's someone to look out for. I haven't looked at the Fangraphs roster resource yet, but I don't know if we'd be there. But look out for him. But I think the Astros they'll be okay. I think they're still a heavy favorite in the AL West. And yeah, Altuve, he'll be back. He'll be good. They got who's it to be? David Hensley. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, so if you're curious about the new or the temporary starting second baseman, for the Astros, listen to the AL West Players to Watch episode toward the end. I go over David Hensley.
Yeah.
So watch out for that. There were also some non-WBC injuries that we haven't gotten to yet, but I think we could briefly go over. Jose Quintana for the Mets.
Yeah, it's my player to watch.
He's out for 3 months with a rib bone graft.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about this injury?
I mean, it's definitely going to test the Mets' pitching depth pretty decently. It'll give David Peterson a chance. I mean, Mets fans have been pretty high on him for the last couple of years, so it's a really similar type of pitcher, a left-hander, a little more soft throwing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see David Peterson. That's really my only take on that one.
Yeah, I think Peterson has typically had a good strikeout to walk ratio historically, I believe, which is good. And the Mets are in a better situation than most teams would after losing a starter of that caliber. David Peterson is a fine replacement. Yeah, he threw 105 and 2/3 innings pitched, 10.7 strikeouts per 9 last year, 3.64 FIP, 3.83 ERA, 101 ERA plus. So to have that as a back end option is pretty good, and maybe it puts a little more pressure on someone like Kodai Senga, who doesn't have any MLB experience. So who knows about that? But the Mets, they set themselves up in a situation where they can lose a guy for 3 months and they'll be all right. And then we could briefly talk about Carlos Rodon. He had a forearm strain or something. Yeah. It takes him out until at least May, I think. Not a great start to the contract.
Not a great start, but also I think the Yankees are playing it safe here. Because if they put him on the opening day roster, with his injury history, they are risking much more than a month for him going on the shelf. If you're a Yankee fan, you'd rather lose Rodon for a month than play him and take the real risk of losing him for more than a month, maybe even the year. That's kind of what we're looking at. So, I think the Yankees rotation will survive without him. They have guys like Clark Schmidt, who looked interesting last year. Domingo Germán will do all right. They also have who else did they put on the IL? Frankie Montas.
Yes.
Yeah, that one is. I'm less optimistic about that one, but Rodon I think will be fine. In the end. Yeah.
So a NewJersey.com article said that it had some good quotes from Rodon, and it said that he's going to be on a 6-week, simulating a 6-week spring training post injury. He had a period of time where he couldn't throw at all, and he'll be back. He's throwing weighted balls, and
I think it was 7 to 10 days they didn't want him to throw.
Yeah, and a quote from him was basically saying they're protecting me.
Yeah. So,
it sucks that we're not going to be able to see, that the Yankees aren't going to be able to see him in pinstripes to start the year. He's someone that's only had a qualified season twice.
One of them was last year.
So his injury history it has been brought up, and I think the Yankees knew what they were signing up for. But yeah, it's probably why they're being a little bit extra protective.
That's also probably why he didn't get as much as he probably could have.
Very true. Yeah, a guy who led the league in strikeout rate and FIP, you would have thought at the age of 29, you would have thought would have gotten a $200 million contract, but it doesn't have
didn't even really come close.
Doesn't have a great track record on with health wise. But yeah, he's an exciting pitcher. and it still sucks that the Yankees have him. We're Red Sox fans, if you didn't know.
Yeah.
But we will be getting into the Red Sox. Good segue there.
Mm-hmm.
I have to point it out myself. We will be getting into the Red Sox with our AL East players to watch. Also going over additions, subtractions, and questions we have for the other person. Anything you want to get to before we get to this preview?
No, I'm ready to get into it one last time.
Yeah, one last time. A lot less research in the next coming weeks.
Yeah.
All right. So we will start. We go from bottom to top, and we'll start with the Red Sox, who, despite a 78-84 record, did finish last in the AL East. The division was pretty good. I'll give them that. The Red Sox, they lost Xander Bogaerts, Nathan Eovaldi, JD Martinez, Michael Wacha, Tommy Pham, Matt Strahm, Rich Hill, Matt Barnes, Eric Hosmer, Franchi Cordero, and Tyler Danish. They added Masataka Yoshida, Kenley Jansen, Justin Turner, Corey Kluber, Adam Duvall, Chris Martin, Richard Blyer, Joely Rodriguez, and Adalberto Mondesi. Who is your player to watch from our hometown team?
I know this is weird because this guy did just get a close to 9-figure contract this offseason, but I am looking at Masataka Yoshida. He will be getting his first major league experience, and he's been pretty much a staple in Japan. It's hard to tell how guys that come over from foreign countries, especially from the Eastern Hemisphere, will perform. But Yoshida has an OPS above 900 in each season since 2017. And he slashed 336, 449, 559, 1007 last year. Given his past 6 years, this guy is about as safe a bet as you can get.
Yeah.
Especially on offense, where the Japan game is more based on pitching.
Yes. Yeah.
All Fangraphs projection models have his weighted runs created plus being between 124 and 139 in 2023. And the thing about those models is that they project your 50th percentile projections. So, if he could perform above that and get a 140 or 150, but they have him baseline at 123 to 139. And I think a lot of Red Sox fans would be happy with him being there. The models also had him with excellent walk-to-strikeout numbers. It's very possible that he walks more than he strikes out, which would be excellent, especially on the Red Sox, a team that has kind of lacked walk rate over the last few seasons, a team that swings at a lot of pitches. During the World Baseball Classic, he is slashing 400, 522, 667, 1189. He is tied for the most RBIs in the tournament, and he also has the most plate appearances among all players in the WBC at any pool that have struck out 0 times. 15 at-bats, 0 strikeouts, not a one. And I think the most important thing about Yoshida and why I have him as my player to watch is that he has a real opportunity on the Red Sox to change the entire narrative around this team, because there's a lot of negative feedback having lost Xander Bogaerts, not looking like a World Series contender this year, a last-place finish last year, the 3rd year into Chaim Bloom's tenure. And Masataka Yoshida has a real chance to change that entire narrative alone. Probably a better chance than any individual person on this team.
Yeah, it very much so, especially should be already prominent in the lineup, and I'll admit, as a Red Sox fan, this is like the least optimistic I've been about a Red Sox lineup since maybe Ortiz left.
Yeah.
Because, losing Bogaerts and also Story being out for a good amount of time, and also losing JD Martinez, it doesn't inspire a lot. However, Yoshida was kind of a sneaky bat on the market, and there's a lot in question because he's never played at the major league level. But yeah, he could stand out as a good sign if he does perform, near that Japanese ability.
Yes.
And you did mention that, the Japanese league is very based on pitching. The league OPS for the Japanese league was 668 last year.
It's really bad.
Yeah,
if you thought offense was bad in America, that's very low. The
MLB OPS was, I believe, 708. So yes. It was 40 points ahead of Japan in a down year for the MLB. Because I think MLB's league-wide OPS was like 727 or 728 in 2021.
That's like where it should be.
Which is about average, yeah. That's Masataka Yoshida. My player to watch is kind of more just letting people know he's out there, because I think with the Xander Bogaerts leaving And with Trevor Story being out, you could look at the middle infield situation as like god awful. However, I think this guy he's not at their level, but he's not too far from it. I'm talking about Christian Arroyo. So, despite Bogaerts leaving and Story being hurt, they're still at the Red Sox are still at a decent position at second base. He's not a superstar, but he's still pretty good. Last year he hit 286 with a 736 OPS and a 103 OPS plus, with slightly better expected numbers. Also, if you look at his baseball savant, you might be alarmed by him being 10th percentile in outs above average, but that negative defense was from the Red Sox trying him out in right field, which is not a position for him. He's an infielder. And he's been neutral at second base for his entire career defensively. Also with Christian Arroyo, he made some improvements to his offensive game. From 2021 to 2022, his average exit velocity went from 86.3 miles per hour to 88.8 miles per hour, and his hard hit rate went from 35.5% to 41.8%. Also, a very good sign was his strikeout rate went from 24% to 16%. His whiff rate also went from 26.5% to 20.5%. His zone contact rate went from 82.1% to 90.1%. He's 90% of the time he swings at a ball in the zone, it's going to be made contact with. Also, Arroyo in 2022 had a 27.7% line drive rate, which is a couple percentage points above average. Arroyo, out of 334 hitters to swing at 300 plus pitches in the strike zone, Arroyo's zone contact percentage ranked 23rd, which is top 7% among those 334 hitters. And last thing I'll say about Arroyo is he is projected 1.4 FWAR in 81 games. And if he kept that pace for 116 games, he'd be a 2-win player, which is, a good position to be at for a guy who was not a projected starter before Trevor Story got hurt. Or before Bogaerts left and Story got hurt. So that leads into questions about the Red Sox.
Yeah. So my question: who gets more Rookie of the Year votes, assuming one of them gets at least one? Tristan Casas or Masataka Yoshida?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think both have a lot of questions surrounding them, but both have somewhat similar style of very patient hitters who I think like to see a lot of pitches. I'll say Yoshida because he has more experience at the professional level, even if it's not at MLB.
Yeah.
But Casas, I think Casas has a higher ceiling in his career, but Yoshida, I think, is better at a better place now. Yeah. That's what I will say. My question, it kind of revolves around a guy who's been there a few years and maybe has a little more upside than we've seen from him, and then Masataka Yoshida, who has some question marks around him. Who will accumulate more WAR? I think you've probably already answered this. Alex Verdugo or Masataka Yoshida?
I'm all in on Yoshida. Yeah, Verdugo, I need to see him hitting less ground balls, man. I really need to see it. Yoshida's defense is probably going to weigh him down a decent amount.
Yeah.
Verdugo's base running is sometimes good, sometimes not good. He's a guy that's never afraid to take extra bases, so I don't know how that's going to affect his BSR. That's obviously a component in F4. I'll take Yoshida, though. I need to see more from Verdugo on offense.
Yeah, Verdugo, he had a good 2020, unlike most of us. Sorry. He had a down
gets him every time.
Had like an average 2021 and was not on the upswing in 2022, but he's still, I think, heading into his age 27 or 28 season.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we're waiting for him to kind of break out or like be potentially an all-star. All right, now we move on to the Baltimore Orioles, who surprised us all last year. They went 83-79 and finished fourth in the AL East. after being tied for the worst record in Major League Baseball. I went through their subtractions, and the only one I could really find that was of any significance was Jordan Lyles. And they added Cole Irvin, Adam Frazier, Kyle Gibson, Franchi Cordero, Nomar Mazara, and James McCann. And with the Orioles, I will start with my player to watch, who is Kyle Stowers. He is a 25-year-old outfielder who had 98 plate appearances last year and still qualifies as a rookie for this year. There's plenty of young studs to look out for with the Orioles, but this guy's a little more under the radar than usual. So Stowers has a high strikeout rate, low walk rate, which is not great. However, his batted ball profile is spectacular. He had a .418 slugging percentage and a .447 expected slugging percentage, and he also had a 38.7% sweet spot rate, which is 5.7 percentage points above average, and a 32.3% line drive rate, which is over 7% above average. His average exit velocity was
91.1 miles per hour.
91.1 miles per hour. His hard hit rate was
50%.
Was 50.0%, and his barrel rate
was 11.7%.
11.3%. Did I have it wrong?
Please hold.
But yeah, I'm assuming we have the same guy here with Kyle Stowers. But with Stowers, high strikeout rate, low walk rate.
It is 11.3. I had it wrong.
Yeah, with Stowers, it's a high strikeout rate, low walk rates, but when he hits the ball, it's very good. So his expected batting average when he made contact, also known as his expected bacon, batting average on contact. His expected batting average on contact was .391, and out of 497 hitters with 50-plus batted balls, his expected batting average on contact was 8th highest at a 497. That's top 2%. Some of the names above him were Aaron Judge and Yordan Alvarez, as well as other players to watch that we've noted, such as Nolan Jones, J.D. Davis, and Brian De La Cruz. So, when he hits the ball, he's expected to reach base a lot of the time. And he was also shifted against 88.8% of the time last year, and that will be gone this year. So look out for that. He'll be able to, probably find some holes a lot easier than he did last year. So, Daniel, who's your player to watch?
My player to watch is Cole Irvin. I'm just kidding. No, I had Kyle Stowers as well. A lot of what you said, I already have. In 62 batted balls last year, he had an average exit velocity of
91.1 miles per hour.
A hard hit rate of
50.0%.
A sweet spot percentage of
38.7%.
And a barrel rate, I stand corrected, of
11.3%.
That's correct. 58.1% of his batted balls were fly balls or line drives, nearly identical to that of Mookie Betts. So,
wow.
If we're looking in similarities to batted ball profile, that's legitimately a good comparison to make, Kyle Stowers to Mookie Betts. Of course, the one thing that he needs to improve on is both his contact and his swing decisions. His chase rate was 6% above average last year, and his chase contact rate was 20% below average. His chase contact rate last year was 38%, the league average of 58%. So, he definitely needs to work on knowing when to swing, and when he does swing, hitting the ball. I really didn't have too much else other than what you had. So, yeah, I also am looking at Kyle Stowers on the Orioles.
Yeah, so, we had the same person, so I figure I'll give a shout-out to the other person I considered for player to watch, which is Grayson Rodriguez. So, obviously can't go too in-depth to him. Also, he's mostly been a minor leaguer.
He's also, was the number 2 prospect last year.
Yeah, he's MLB.com's number 7 prospect in baseball. Career in the minors in 292 innings pitched, 12.9 strikeouts per 9, 3.0 walks per 9. Last year, specifically in the minors, 13 strikeouts per 9 in 75 and 2/3 innings pitched.
What was his home run per 9?
0.2. He allowed.
Oh my goodness!
He allowed 2 home runs in 75 and 2/3 innings in the minors last year.
And he's going to be in Baltimore.
Yeah,
that's pretty nice.
He's going to be in Baltimore.
Yeah,
and the only concern you might have is health, because he He's run into some injury trouble.
It's like probably the only reason he didn't pitch last year in the majors.
Yeah, and he's only 23 years old. I'm sure the Orioles are kind of trying to be careful on him, so I don't know if I'd expect a lot of innings at the major league level this year. But he's someone to look out for if the Orioles do go on a playoff run and they want to add some pitching. They might go internally and have Grayson Rodriguez get some more innings at the MLB level. So yeah, he's another guy to look out for. He was my other guy I was considering, but Stowers, already having some MLB experience and also some StatCast data.
Yes.
Figured I'd go into him. All right, so now on to questions. My question is, so for context, Adley Rutschman had 49 extra base hits in 2022. Will Gunnar Henderson get to that many extra base hits in 2023?
I'm assuming he's going to be called up a lot sooner than Adley did because Adley was hurt to begin last year.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't surprise me if Gunnar Henderson does not start the year on the opening day roster because the Orioles are a franchise notorious for taking advantage of the service time manipulation. I'll go with it though. I think he can get to 49 or above. Yeah, I'll say yes on that. My question is sort of similar. It's about Adley Rutschman. Adley Rutschman had 5.2 B-WAR last year in 113 games. The most B-WAR that a catcher has ever produced in their first 2 seasons was Russell Martin at 7.6. Now, of course, Adley is only 2.4 away from tying that, 2.5 away from breaking that. Will he be there by the All-Star break? Will he be at 2.4/2.5 F4 by the All-Star break?
So yeah, that's also a little more than half a season. And he had 5.2 B-WAR, you mentioned. Yeah, which is interesting because they don't even measure framing necessarily.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say yes. I think he gets to that point.
Going to make history.
He's proven to be really, really good very early, and yeah.
If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about Adley, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Because let's break that down for a second. No catcher in baseball history, going back to 1871, including Negro Leagues, has never produced more than 7.6 F4 in their first 2 seasons combined. Adley has played about 75% of one season, and he's on pace to shatter that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, just like how it reminds you that it is kind of rare to see a guy break out that soon.
If he could very easily be the first catcher to have 10 B-WAR in their first 2 seasons.
Yeah, very true.
He would need to produce. He's already halfway there
by a wide margin.
Yeah,
pretty wild. And there's nothing to suggest he's due to regress at all.
No,
nothing really.
He's already good at everything.
Yeah,
except for maybe a little more power would be nice, but he's also in Baltimore. So
true. Yeah.
Granted, only when he's facing lefties, but
true. Yep. So yeah, that's what we got on the Orioles. Some Adley Rutschman questions and whatnot.
Yeah.
They'll be an interesting team to watch this year. Now we get into the Tampa Bay Rays, who went 86-76 last year, finished 3rd in the AL East, got the number 6 seed in the AL playoffs, and lost to the Guardians in the wild card round. In the offseason, they lost Corey Kluber, G-Man Choi, Kevin Kiermaier, Brooks Raley, Ryan Yarbrough, David Peralta, Mike Zunino, and JP Fireeisen. And the Rays in the offseason added Zach Eflin, Charlie Culberson, and Ben Gamel. Who are you watching on this Rays team?
There are a lot of people to go for on the Rays because they're notorious for just having guys break out of nowhere. My guy for this year is Jonathan Aranda, who is a second baseman, a middle infielder, utility infielder, if you will. Jonathan Aranda, in, I believe, 89 plate appearances last year, or something around there, had a soft fastballs at a 62% clip. That is well above the league average, 7% above the league average, in fact, in 2022. And on this, normally when you see a guy that faced one particular pitch type a lot, it's pretty inferred that they didn't do well against them. And on the surface, his numbers did not look good against fastballs, but it did appear that he was unlucky. So against fastballs, he had a 67-point difference between batting average and expected batting average. a 127-point difference between slugging and ex-slugging, and a 69-point difference between WOBA and ex-WOBA. All three of these ranked in the top 12 unluckiest among the 502 hitters with at least 300 total pitches seen throughout last year. So he got a healthy dose of fastballs, and he should have done better on them. In fact, I believe his BABIP last season was like below 200 or something like that. I don't think it was below 200, but it was definitely low. I think it was like 230, 240. So, like I was saying, Aranda has a where did I leave off? Here we go. Like Stowers, he had an average exit velocity last year of 91.1 miles per hour, the exact same. However, he did have a 54.5% ground ball rate. Aranda has 16th percentile sprint speed, which isn't ideal for a guy hitting ground balls, but he did have a 200 BABIP against ground balls, which was 41 points below league average, and he was shifted against in 44.2% of his plate appearances that will be gone. It's reasonable to infer that he will be better without the shift because his WOBA without the shift last year was 293. His WOBA with the shift was 227, so that's a significant difference. And also, since 2021, he has a 152 weighted runs created plus in 876 minor league plate appearances. That ranked 34th among the 2,287 qualifying minor leaguers over that 2-year span. So Jonathan Aranda, I think, is a breakout candidate for the Rays. It is a little hard to see where he fits on this roster right now, but if he plays well enough, he'll find a way.
Yeah. Is he infielder or outfielder? Infielder. Yeah, shout out to Jonathan Aranda. My player to watch is a little bit, definitely a lot more on people's radars, especially after last year, but I think probably not enough. I think it was just weird, especially for Red Sox fans. It was weird to see this guy just like break out because he was treacherous for the Red Sox in the very forgettable or unforgettable in some ways 2020 season. But Jeffrey Springs.
I was going to go with him if I didn't go for Aranda, so I'm glad you got with him.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't go for him as well. Glad you got Aranda.
Yeah.
Because that was not a guy on my radar because I wasn't looking that deep. But Springs started for the first time since 2018 last year. It had been 4 years since he started a Major League Baseball game. And he ended up throwing 135 innings and 135 and a third innings with a 2.46 ERA, 3.04 FIP, and 3.27 expected ERA. Out of 90 pitchers with 130 or more innings pitched last year, his ERA ranked 10th. Springs was between Nestor Cortez and Max Fried on that ERA list. So, two guys who got Cy Young votes. It's just Springs didn't have the innings. So along with a strikeout minus walk rate of 19.6% last year, Springs had an average exit velocity in the 73rd percentile and a barrel rate in the 75th percentile. So Springs' four-seamer averages 91.4 miles per hour for only 22nd percentile in baseball, but it does not stop him from getting swings and misses on it. So he uses it 40.4% of the time for his most used pitch, and he has a 26.5% whiff rate against it. 22 pitchers had 250 or more swings against four-seamers that were 92 miles per hour or lower. Did you get all that? 22 pitchers, 250 or more swings on four-seamers, 92 miles per hour or lower. And Springs had the highest whiff rate on such pitches. So along with the slow fastball that got a lot of swings and misses, he also used his changeup 34.7% of the time, and hitters slugged 320 against it, and only had a 279 expected slugging against that changeup. And out of 26 pitchers to throw 500-plus changeups last year, his expected slugging on them ranked 5th. That was behind Devin Williams, Sandy Alcantara, Shane McClanahan, and Tyler Anderson, all of which were all-stars last year. And also out of 103 pitchers to throw 2,000-plus pitches last year, his percentage of pitches that were in the shadow attack zone, which were the edges of the strike zone, he was 13th out of 103, around near top 10% there. So, the shadow attack zones I learned from Daniel in the playoffs last year are basically just the edges of the strike zone, where you're making the ball hard to hit hard. Jeffrey Springs was top, 12, 13% in that out of 103 pitchers. So, that's Jeffrey Springs. He throws a slow fastball that a lot of people swing and miss at, and has a very good changeup as well.
Yes.
All right. Now, question time.
So my question, who will rank higher in F4 at their respective position? Shane McClanahan or Pete Fairbanks?
Ooh, so who will...
Their starting ace or their relief ace?
Yeah, that's a good question, because Fairbanks had this crazy strikeout rate and walk rate. But also McClanahan did. He was very good, and he had a bad
Home run rate.
Home run to fly ball ratio, which not that I go off xFIP and whatnot too often, but maybe a little something to consider. That's a very difficult question. I'm gonna go McClanahan because I trust him to get the innings.
Yeah. Fairbanks was hurt last year.
Fairbanks was hurt, and he throws extremely hard. Not that McClanahan doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's more just kind of luck. I wouldn't be surprised to see Fairbanks rank higher in reliever F4 than McClanahan does in starter F4. But I think I'm a little high on McClanahan, so I'm gonna keep riding the McClanahan wave.
Yeah, it's a good pick.
But yeah, what Fairbanks did last year should be heavily considered. So my question for you is, will Brandon Lau have over or under a 799.5 OPS this year?
799.5. He's coming back. Well, he was very good in parts of... he was the 2020 first half MVP.
Yep.
Which basically means player of the month
Yep.
at one time. He is coming off of an injury-riddled season in which he also kind of struggled, but that could have been due to injury. He was at 863 in 2021. 799.5, huh? Well, that doesn't have anything to do with plate appearance amount or anything.
No.
I feel like I've been very optimistic on a lot of these guys. I'm still going to take the over, though,
All right.
in these
All right.
questions.
Brandon Lau over 800 OPS or above. All right. So now we move on to the Blue Jays. Last year they went 92-70 and finished second in the AL East. They got the number 4 seed in the AL playoffs and lost to the Mariners in the wild card round. Over the offseason, they lost Teoscar Hernandez, Ross Stripling, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Raimel Tapia, Gabriel Moreno, Bradley Zimmer, and Jackie Bradley Jr. And they added Dalton Varsho, Chris Bassett, Eric Swanson, Kevin Kiermaier, Brandon Belt, Chad Green, and Drew Hutchison. Love to see that. So now I will start with my player to watch from the Blue Jays, and that is Yimi Garcia. I sort of wanted to go...
I believe he was my... No, never mind. Jarlin Garcia was a player to watch.
Yimi Garcia, I'm not necessarily going with him because he's necessarily super dominant, but I think he's very interesting. And I was going to go with maybe Eric Swanson, but I felt like that, I don't know. I think Garcia is unique in a certain way, so I went with him. He's a right-handed reliever who had a 3.10 ERA and a 2.90 expected ERA in 61 innings pitched last year, along with an 18.5% strikeout minus walk rate last year. His average exit velocity was in the 89th percentile. He also had a 12.4% pop-up rate and a 16.0% line drive rate. Out of 309 pitchers with 150-plus batted balls against last year, Garcia's pop-up rate ranks 9th highest, and line drive rate ranks 4th least out of 309. 18.9% of his batted balls against him were 50 degrees or higher, which was 5th most out of 309. And on those batted balls of 50 degrees or higher, hitters were 0 for 32 again on those batted balls. Saying that those batted balls, 50 degrees or higher, they're not going to land for hits. Also, Garcia used his four-seam fastball 44.4% of the time and batters hit 127 and slugged 203 against it. Out of 609 pitchers to have 100-plus plate appearances and against a certain pitch, Garcia's run value per 100
Yes, sir.
on his fastball was third best. And out of 225 pitchers to have 100-plus plate appearances and against a four-seamer, he had the lowest run value per 100 pitches thrown. And his run value per 100 was negative 3.8, and the next best on a four-seamer was negative 2.9. So that means
Full run.
that he was almost a full run better for every 100 four-seamers he threw than the next best guy on four-seamers. So I think it gets a lot of spin, and he uses it very well in the top of the strike zone, hence his very high pop-up rate. And he also gets swings and misses on it. So, you wouldn't think Yimi Garcia has the third most effective pitch in baseball, but
Yeah,
he did in 2022. So
objectively.
shout out to Yimi Garcia. Who is your player to watch from the Blue Jays?
My player to watch is. So I'm gonna give you a little list here. The following is the top 10 in weighted runs created plus since July 11th of 2021, a minimum of 300 plate appearances. Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Paul Goldschmidt, Yordan Alvarez, Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, my player, Freddie Freeman, Jose Altuve, Julio Rodriguez. Who do you think the blank is at number 7 in between Juan Soto and Freddie Freeman?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would be too obvious. And I think you highlighted Varsho last year or 2 years ago, so I don't think you'd repeat. So that leaves us. Teoscar Hernandez is gone. Just process of elimination. I'm sorry. I think Bichette would be a little too on the nose. Man, I'm losing it. I don't know. Alejandro Kirk.
Same position, different player. I'm talking about
Danny Jensen.
Yeah,
Wow.
who has a 156, I believe, weighted runs created plus over that span. Jansen is slashing 276, 348, 587 for a 935 OPS since July 11th of 2021. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay on the field, and also it's kind of weird to figure out where he fits into this Blue Jays lineup.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty stacked. They have Alejandro Kirk catching. I think they're going to stick with that. So that'll be interesting. But he particularly dominated against sliders. In 69 plate appearances against sliders, his 3.1 run value per 100 ranks 6th among the 296 hitters to have at least 50 plate appearances and on sliders. His 597 slugging ranked 9th. His 386 WOBA ranked 12th. And his 20.7% whiff rate ranked 18th. So Danny Jansen is has literally been one of the best hitters in baseball since July 11th of 2021. I know it's an arbitrary date, but it goes back over 300 plate appearances for him, 322 to be exact. And it's going to be interesting to see where he fits onto this Blue Jays roster. Does he make the opening day lineup? How many at-bats do they give him? Do they trade him? It's going to be a lot to answer. I know they did consider trading him this offseason, but we're just going to have to wait and see what they go with.
Yeah. I mean, the catcher position is one where you can be a little bit lucrative with.
Mm-hmm.
And having a DH option is always good too. But I don't know, who's their projected DH right now?
They have it as Brandon Belt. I will take Danny Jansen over him.
Yeah, especially I imagine. I mean, not that I know, but there's probably a lefty righty difference too.
Oh, definitely.
I would imagine.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they'll platoon that.
Yeah. But over the last, I guess you could say over the last 3 half seasons, since the second half started or around there of 2021, he's been the 8th best, 9th best hitter in baseball. 7th. Yeah, even better.
Right between Juan Soto and Freddie Freeman.
All right, so now we get into questions regarding the Blue Jays. Start with my question. So the Blue Jays kind of underwhelmingly finished 8th in the AL in starter ERA in 2022. With potential bounce-backs, additions, and defensive improvements with Kiermaier, will they be top 5 this year?
Top 5. So they have Manoah, they have Gosman, they have Barrios, who was disappointing last year. They added Bassett, they have Yusei Kikuchi. As for depth...
And they lost Ross Stripling.
They did. Hyunjin Ryu is probably not going to pitch. He had Tommy John surgery. It's unfortunate. In the minors, they have like Mitch White. They still have Nate Pearson. Still kind of waiting on him.
Yeah.
I mean, top 5 in the AL?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, what? The Yankees are projected probably to be above them. I'm presuming the Guardians are probably projected to be above them. The
Seattle.
Astros, the Mariners. I'm going to say no. I don't think they're top 5. I think they're close.
Yeah.
I think sabermetrically, they are in a very good spot. I know Kevin Gosman has been an advocate of strikeout rate minus walk rate.
Yeah.
I think sabermetrically, you could argue that they are a top 5 rotation, but I don't think in starter ERA.
True. There. It is also funny because based on peripherally last year, you could just see Gosman and Manoah's ERAs flip.
Yep.
So yeah. Your question.
My question, will Vladimir Guerrero Jr. have over or under a 50% ground ball rate? For reference, he had a 54.6% ground ball rate in 2020, a 45.6% ground ball rate in 2021, the year that he finished second in the MVP voting, and he totally would have won it any other year but Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
Because he would have won it in 2022.
Yes.
But, Shohei Ohtani. 2021, anyway.
Right.
And a 52.3% ground ball rate in 2022.
Yeah,
it feels like 50 is kind of the magic number for him.
Yeah, it's something you want to stay under. And I don't have any inside info on the Blue Jays and how they're teaching him. However, I imagine they would try to get to him about that, considering he is one of the hardest hitting guys and not necessarily a fast player. And when he puts it in the air, can easily get it over the fence. I'll say under.
All right.
Maybe it's an every other year thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
But maybe it's just me being optimistic for the Blue Jays. Whatever happens, I hope it's at 100% when he plays the Red Sox.
Yes.
Because it's weird to say I'm optimistic because I want to see a star do well, but not against my team. I don't want that to happen.
Of course.
All right, now on to the last team of the entire previews of this run, this 6-week run. We're talking about the New York Yankees. It's the Bronx Bombers, baby. They went 99-63 last year, won the American League East, got the number 2 seed in the American League playoffs, beat the Guardians in the ALDS, and lost to the Astros in the ALCS. Over the offseason, they lost Jameson Taillon, Andrew Benintendi, Matt Carpenter, Lucas Luetge, Earl Chapman, Chad Green, and Miguel Castro. And they added Carlos Rodon and Tyler Danish. Who is your player to watch from the Yankees?
My player to watch is everyone's favorite 22-year-old. I'm going with Gleyber Torres. I'm buying on the breakout year from Gleyber Torres, who, as a reminder, he is 22 years old.
Yeah.
Real ones know. Between 2021 and 2022, he had the highest rise in average exit velocity. He went from 87.1 miles per hour in exit velocity to 90.4%. And he also had the highest rise in hard hit rate, going from 35.7% in 2021 to 45.3% in 2022. This he led among the 167 qualified batters between each of the 2 seasons. In 2021, this is what I found the most interesting about him. In 2021, 12.7% of his batted balls were opposite field fly balls. In 2022, 13.2% of his batted balls were such, which meant there was not really a difference. But in 2021, he hit 143 on those batted balls with a 381 slugging. In 2022, he hit 250 with an 827 slugging, the 12th highest among the 174 hitters with at least 300 batted balls. Why did this happen? Well, he plays for the Yankees, so clearly the short porch obviously had something to do with it, and that's not an exaggeration. That probably had a very strong case, but you got to keep in mind that's like you can't. If someone ever tells you exit velocity doesn't help you out or doesn't win you games or whatever, they're lying. This is direct proof right here. Gleyber Torres hit roughly the same amount of opposite field fly balls. He hit one batch in a season with low exit velocity, one in the season with high exit velocity. He did much better in the season with higher exit velocity.
Yeah.
And it proved to put him on the resurgence, especially late last year. He was really good. And he's a guy that the Yankees are going to need to step up because I think there are a lot of question marks in that offense outside of just Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
So Gleyber Torres is my guy to watch.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think hitting the ball harder has anything to do with getting more hits.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. No, but yeah, that's
bad focal point, honestly.
That's a good stat, and especially like last year was not a year where home runs were a big thing.
No,
home runs dropped, and he was still able to do better on short porch home runs, as you noted, and yeah, him hitting the ball harder with a less bouncy baseball, so to say. That's a really good sign for the Yankees and Gleyber Torres. My player to watch, literally, if you just read his name, just sounds like any
Yankees fan,
any pinstriped Guido in the bleacher creatures. We're talking about Ron Marinaccio, eh? This guy.
I'm walking here.
Look at this guy. It's Ronnie Marinaccio. He grew up in Bed-Stuy, and now he's pitching for the Yankees. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's got his chain out, and his average exit velocity last year was 84.5 miles per hour.
Can you do this entire bit in voice?
I can try. I got a lot of notes on Ronnie Marinaccio. With Ronnie Marinaccio, he's a 27-year-old right-hander reliever. He had a 2.05 ERA, 2.70 expected ERA, and a 30.9% strikeout rate, and 44 in the third innings pitched. Let me tell you about Marinaccio. He had a 149 batting average and a 156 expected batting average and a 236 slugging and a 238 expected slugging. So even with the low batting average and slugging percentage, it wasn't far off from his expected numbers, you see. Out of 378 pitches to throw 750-plus pitches last year, his expected batting average was fourth lowest and his expected slugging was third lowest. You know what I mean? And Ronnie Marinaccio, this guy, he gets a lot of swings and misses. He had a 33.2% whiff rate last year. And out of 419 pitchers with 300-plus swings against them, his whiff rate was 38th, which is top 10%. That's pretty wild. You don't see that from a guy growing up in Bed-Stuy, you know what I'm saying? And along with a 17.6% strikeout minus walk rate, his average exit velocity against was 84.5 miles per hour, and his hard hit rate was 25.5%. Also, his line drive rate was 20.2%. That's like 5% below average, my guy. That's pretty crazy. You don't see that too often these days. It just doesn't happen. And out of 378 pitches, out of 378 pitches, his average exit velocity was 11th lowest. That's top 3%. Top 3% soft contact, this Ronnie Marinaccio. And out of 582 pitchers with 50-plus batted balls against them, his hard hit rate was 6th lowest. That's like top 1% guy. This is crazy. And he had the third low. I mentioned his line drive rate is so low, and his average exit velocity is so low. Out of 582 pitchers, I'm losing track here. He had the third lowest hard hit line drive rate. Hard hit line drive. That means, when you hit the ball 95 miles per hour and it's a line drive, that's a hard hit line drive. He only allowed 4 of those in 95. Good piece of hitting. Good piece of hitting. My guy Derek Jeter used to do that a lot. Right field, and he did that like 3,000 times. It was pretty crazy. My guy Derek Jeter. I wear his number on my back at least 100 days a year. But this Ronnie Marinaccio kid, you got to look out for. Out of 94 batted balls he allowed, only 4 were hard hit line drives. It's 4.3%. League average is around 11%. And he had. Did I write the stat twice? Okay. Sorry. He used his four-seamer 44.3% of the time, guy. And that's a lot of times. And hitters hit 115 and slugged 192 off it. And out of 326 pitches to throw 250-plus four-seamers last year, his slugging was 5th lowest, and his batting average against it was 2nd lowest out of 326. That's pretty crazy. And he used his changeup 37.9% of the time, and hit 141 and slugged 211 off of it. Out of 106 pitches to throw 250 plus changeups last year, his slugging against was 5th lowest, and his batting average against was 3rd lowest out of 106. So he's got the great fastball, he's got the great changeup. It's better than my mama's pasta sauce. You know what I'm saying? Ronnie Marinaccio. He's a good kid. Good kid, that kid. He stays out of trouble. Stays off the streets. Throws baseballs pretty hard. Gets a high strikeout rate. Gotta love him.
You sound like the smartest person to ever call into Mike Francesa's show.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's a 4.3% hard hit line drive rate guy.
Yeah, it's funny. I've heard that voice plenty of times. Never would I think I'd hear real sabermetrics coming out of it.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain.
You know what's very funny? Out of curiosity, I looked up where he's from. Of course, he's from Toms River, New Jersey.
Oh, really?
That's where Todd Frazier played on the Little League World Series. He took a picture with Derek Jeter in the World Series.
I just said Bed-Stuy because I thought he was from Florida or California.
No, I was 100% convinced. Like, if he was not from that area, I was gonna send in a report to Baseball Reference and be like, "You're lying, actually."
Yeah, Ron Marinaccio. But seriously, this guy here. No, he really over a 30% strikeout rate while allowing the softest contact ever is pretty crazy.
Another guy that I looked at. I wanted to limit the number of relievers I went with this year.
Yep.
So This is a good episode because every guy that I wanted to go for, you went for.
That's great. I wanted to avoid that, but I ended up going with 10 relievers this year, which is like a third of my guys, and relievers.
There's multiple guys on teams.
Yeah. Relievers take up about a third of a team's roster, so I think that
makes sense.
That's
very
fair.
Proportionate.
Yeah, I didn't want to take 16 relievers, but if I only had 2 or 3, that would have been a little off too. Not that it really matters, but Ron Marinaccio. There's a lot of guys to look out for with the Yankees bullpen, with Clay Holmes, Wandy Peralta, and Michael King, who I think is going to be healthy this year.
Hopefully.
To start.
They stretched him way too much last year.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. But he ended the year injured. But I think he'll start the year on the team. So those are 3 guys that were really amazing to start the year, and ended up also just having good overall statistics. But Ron Marinaccio is actually he despite the name, he was really good last year. Someone to look out for. Soft contact and strikeout rate, always good. All right, question time.
My question: who will get more innings at shortstop, Oswald Peraza or Anthony Volpe?
Starts at shortstop. Oswald.
More innings.
Oh, more innings.
Yeah. Defensive innings.
Defensive innings. Oswald Cabrera or Anthony Volpe.
Peraza.
Or
Oswaldo Cabrera.
Oswald Peraza.
Oswald Peraza. It's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. What are their ages?
Volpe, I think, is going into his age 22 season, and Peraza, I think, 23, but let me check.
Because I know Volpe is ranked
number 5 prospect or something like
number
that.
Number 5 on MLB.com.
Yeah, okay, Volpe is going into his age 22 season. He turns 22 on April 28th of this year.
Yeah.
And then Peraza is going into his age 23 season. He was born on June 15th, 2000. Shout out to my best friend who was also born on that day.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look at their field grade on MLB.com, and that might just determine everything. So Oswald Peraza is at a 60.
Oswald Peraza already has the experience. He's guaranteed to be on the opening day roster.
Volpe's at a 50. I'm going to say Peraza.
Okay.
Because, they have MLB.com has Volpe at a 50 field, Peraza at a 60, and you mentioned that Peraza already has the experience. They might hold Volpe down a little bit, although I know...
he has hit very well in spring training.
I was shocked to see also he had 50 stolen bases last year.
Yeah.
That was pretty wild.
You know what? Estoy Ruiz had 85.
No,
the guy that got traded twice in the last year.
Wow.
Has stolen, and he also had a 900 OPS too.
Wow. Yeah.
I was very thrown off. That guy's way better than I realized.
Yeah.
Shout out to the A's. They actually got like kind of something from the Sean Murphy deal.
Yeah. That's always good. My question is regarding two starters who have each had some highs and lows in their career. Who will have the lower FIP, Garrett Cole or Nestor Cortez?
I mean, Garrett Cole had the 5th highest home runs per 9 among qualifiers last year. That just doesn't seem like something that can repeat itself. Nestor Cortez started out really good, and then kind of went through a tough stretch, and then ended out really good, but he did get hurt last year. I'm going to say Garrett Cole. I mean, you can't. I feel weird going against him. He's the best strikeout to walk guy in the league. I mean, he'll give you the innings and he'll give you that. You know, if he's not leading, he'll be top 5 for sure. The home runs are definitely the question there, though.
Yeah, that is the question.
Yeah.
I asked that because Cortez had a 3.12 FIP last year. Cole, even with the home runs, had a 3.47.
Yeah.
Cortez obviously had a big up year, and Cole had
relatively a down year.
Yeah, not necessarily like a down year, but below expectations and below his standard.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we got on the Yankees. That's what we got on the AL East. That's what we got on the MLB for players to watch.
That's all of them.
That's all of them. Hope you kept track. All 31-ish guys
From each of us.
Hope you kept track and kept notes and everything.
These guys will all work out.
They'll all
we have a 100% hit rate every year.
Yes.
Which is great.
They're all going to work out. None of them are going to start in the minors and stay in the minors the entire year.
None of them will have a 7.5 ERA.
Yeah. We're referencing Brendan Davis and Carlos Hernandez, who were our top flops last year. Yeah. So
someone actually had a tweet on Carlos Hernandez the other day. I think it was Petriello, where he was like, "Yeah, he throws like 1,000,000 miles an hour, but it's straight as an arrow."
Yeah. It doesn't tend to work out in today's MLB.
It doesn't.
All right. Well, that does it for all that. With all these teams, we don't necessarily do a deep dive on the team as a whole. That's kind of for next week. It is a predictions episode, but we all give a certain reasoning of where we stand on each team, and that's kind of where you get to know what we think about what each team has done over the offseason and where we project them.
Yeah, we're doing standings projections, award projections. I'm going to create a couple custom questions.
Yep. And obviously, and we'll get into the playoff bracket in the World Series, but those that takes a lot less preparation than like the standings and whatnot. That's just kind of like, who in my hypothetical world, who is hot at the right time?
Exactly.
Last year you had the Blue Jays over the Dodgers. I had the Dodgers over the Blue Jays.
That one didn't work out.
Yeah.
Just look at our 2020 World Series projections in July, honestly.
But you know what? To be fair, both teams did well last year.
Yeah.
And both teams probably should have gotten farther than they ended up going.
I did. I believe I had Braves over White Sox in 2021.
You did, yeah. You predicted the Braves.
So I did predict the winner. But last year I had Blue Jays Dodgers, and that did not work out. So
you've picked preseason. You've picked the World Series winner twice, I believe. I think you picked the Dodgers in 2020.
No, I picked the Rays in 2020.
Well, I think you picked them pre-series. You picked the Rays.
No, I'm pretty sure I had them in the world. I'm pretty sure I have them winning the World Series too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely wouldn't have changed it. I would if I had it in July, I would have had it in October.
I'm gonna go back.
And I'm pretty sure I had the Rays though.
Yeah, we'll see about it, but you've at least predicted one. I think in the history of predictions with the show, I've had Rays, I think Dodgers and Dodgers.
Yeah.
Because the Dodgers are just it's hard not to pick them.
It is.
It's hard not to pick them, but they're making it less hard.
Can you imagine last year being I got Phillies over Braves and Padres over Dodgers in April? You can't do that.
Yeah, hear me out. So the Phillies are going to fire Joe Girardi. And then they're going to get a lot hotter.
Yeah.
And then,
And they're going to trade for Brandon Marsh.
Yeah. Now, meanwhile,
Padres.
the Padres are going to head into the 2020.
They're gonna trade for Juan Soto, right?
They're going to trade for Juan Soto. However, Juan Soto's not really going to do well with them in the 2 months that he's there.
But Brandon Drury though.
Yeah, Brandon Drury though, and they're going to in the 2 months leading up to the playoffs, they're going to be about 500. But then they're just going to get really hot in October for no reason at all. But then they're going to lose to the Phillies.
Bryce Harper's going to have his moments, but then he is going to tear his UCL, which is going to suck.
And Josh Hader will be there.
Yeah, Josh Hader's going to close it out. He's going to, hear me out, he's going to strike out Betts, Turner, and Freeman in the 9th as it goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Guardians will be there too.
Yeah.
They'll be up 2-1 in the Yankees, but then lose.
Yeah.
They'll lose.
I mean, come on. The Astros will sweep the Yankees, though.
Yeah.
Nothing will change there.
Nothing will change. All right. Well, that's what you have to look forward to next week. We hope you enjoyed this edition. If you want to listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you're on the YouTube stream right now and just want to listen without having to be on the YouTube app and whatnot, go to the Apple Podcasts and Spotify streams. They are just called Above Replacement Radio. Same thing with the YouTube channel. If you're on the other end of that, go to the YouTube channel. Check out the shorts. Some of the players to watch that we have are, that's in a condensed version on some of the shorts. We have Nolan Jones and Rowdy Tellez up there right now. And
I think we got to put Marinaccio as the next one.
Yeah, I hope people would get it, but yeah, he just sounds like a guy in the bleachers.
You can include that clip where he said he sounds like a Yankee fan.
Yeah. But yeah, check out that. Check out our social medias. I'm at Chris_Gianta on Twitter and at Chris Gianta on Instagram. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Kern, and follow the show on Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. And we hope to see you next week, where we will be doing our season predictions. We will see you then.